Greetings and another Mudflood video here in Unlocking the Matrix presentation number 40. Now I've been out and about. This follows on from the last one I did on this, and what I have discovered is Ipswich in Suffolk in England seems to be the convergence of about 6, possibly 7 tributaries. Now I've mentioned before about Spring Lane and Rope Walk. Just off of this map is Holywells Park, which has natural springs in it. The painter Thomas Gainsborough painted quite a few scenes there, so it shows what is now the park when it was still the gardens of a stately home, the Tollymac family, which later became the Tollycobbold Brewery, with their brewery at Cliff Quay, which is right down the bottom here. Now we're just going to go over to photos I've taken today. Now this is all very interesting. I'd actually hadn't spotted this when I showed the picture of the town hall from the artist sketch. This thing here, this Antiquitech. Now I found another sketch within the same book which shows this in more detail, so we'll come on to that later on. So we'll just move through these photos. I don't want to sort of bore you all to death with this. Anyway, Christchurch Park, right in the middle of the town. There's your natural spring that comes down here, and it runs down into Upper and Lower Brook Street. So you have the Bethesda Church, which I've mentioned. Now, does that really look like that was built in 1912 to you? Worth looking at what the word Bethesda means as well. It is connected with water and swimming baths, and that actually does look like a swimming bath. Now, I was talking to one of the congregation this morning, and he did say to me that they do hear running water under this building, which validates all of this. What's happened here? Right, moving on to the next one. Now this is St Margaret's Church, which is just a little bit further along the same street. Now, all the expensive headstones, this is how you end up. These all predate 1800, but there's fragments of headstones. This one has the date of J, if I can read it myself now, J699 on that one, and there's another one here, can't quite make out the date on that one, but again it's a J rather than a 1, so very interesting that. Now opposite the park there's very few of these Regency houses, but I mean it's not very clear in this picture, but there are what are now basements. And then you've got these steps up to these front doors that make absolutely no sense. So clearly they have put a door in which was once a window, and these had at least one more lower floor before you hit the true ground level. Another building, not very clear in this photo, almost sort of dug into the side of a hill, again makes no sense. If we look at the frontage of it, you can see here how much lower the ground level would have been when this was actually built. It's now residential flats, and then I've missed a photo somewhere. Bear with me a moment. This is the back view of it, and the street level comes along about this height at the front, but as you can see at the back, because the ground slopes down as it turns into, this is Argyle Street, and you have this lower level. You have it at the front, as I showed in that previous photo as well, but it's below the current street level. Now, coming along Spring Road into St Helens Street, you have this, which seems to be now a defunct church with defunct Antiquitech sitting on the top here. Now, what's very interesting is when you go along the side passage next to this church, I don't know how clear it's going to show, but there is clearly It's in line with the windows. There is what looks to be another archway down here. I put two photos up on here, so hopefully the second one, it's this line here. You've got the flint and then you've got brick, which looks to be the top of a door or a window, which I thought was very interesting. This is all on an upward slope as well. So again, it's very revealing when you start looking at these small details. All the way along this street, you have this repeat pattern. Steps up to the front door, much lower level. So again, they've cut the window out, turned it into a door, put the steps in. Really makes sense to have all these high steps. You imagine how if it's icy or anything and you've got to come down. It's quite hazardous, no grab rails or anything either. Repeat pattern all the way along most of these streets. This is Spring Road. This is showing that viaduct again, how high it is, and over to the left is still allotments, which I think it still has the natural spring somewhere below the ground level still. And this is huge. The ground dramatically slopes either side of this. This road will then start to climb once it gets the other side of this railway viaduct. So we move on to the next photo. Again, little telltale sign, front door, lower window, with the top of the window just poking above the street level. And this is a repeat pattern all the way along. Now, another church, now defunct, massive church. There's another one not too far away from that one, within a quarter of a mile. Not sufficient houses to have both of these built as places of worship, but they do fit in. You can just about see, I've took this picture, so you can see the tower of the second one and the first one. Neither of these are in use as religious centres anymore. Ironic, they've been repurposed yet again. So we'll come on to these last few pictures. Now this is a sketch from 1842. This seems to be from Stoke Bridge. Now you'll see there's another tributary coming this side of this building, which does actually show on the older maps, which I can show here. I mean, there it is. It's this one that runs up here. The football ground is roughly about here, and then you've got the Alderman Recreation Ground, which is notorious for flooding at certain times of years, and you can see the tributary coming along here. And I'm suggesting that you have one coming down Upper and Lower Brook Street, Upper and Lower Orwell Street. Then you also have Spring Lane and Rope Walk, and I've suggested that Rope Walk, yes, they did make ropes for ships, but I'm suggesting that the name takes its name from when it was a floodplain before they cleared this water, and they probably used planks of wood to walk across as possibly a shortcut down to the dock area. And then finally we'll come back to this Antiquitech. Now this is what was on the Cornhill until 1842. Hopefully you won't know all these wretched lines showing that I'm seeing through this phone camera, but allegedly they'd say it was a bandstand or something, but it's something to do with harnessing magnetic fields or transporting energy for certain. And lo and behold, there is the old town hall with the steps going up there. The new, or the current town hall, is said to have been built between 1866 and 1868. Now, something I forgot to mention before, in the commentary, in the sort of guided tour when they had the open weekend last weekend, it was mentioned about having to do repairs to the floor about 1880 because it was starting to collapse. So I'm suggesting that is to do with the mud floods. I showed on the previous video about that additional cornerstone that was put in 1880. Now, another interesting thing with Ipswich, the introduction of horse-drawn trams does not occur until 1880, and electric trams did not come until 1901. So Ipswich is quite late to electric traction, street traction, by going by this narrative. So I'm going to suggest, because all these sketches from this book seem to come from 1842, I'm going to suggest that there was a mud flood circa 1840-1850, followed by a second one around about 1875 to 1880. All this is starting to come together now. So also the name Ipswich has been changed from Gipperswick, which takes its name from the River Gipping. Now, I wonder if the G, which is the 7th letter of the alphabet, is also a reference to that there were 7 tributaries that all converged at this point where this town now sits today. Just a few ideas there anyway, so I'll leave that with you. The next video is going to be reverting back to talking about more spiritual matters, but there's a little bit more evidence on this mud flood anyway. But beautiful structure, certainly worth having a look at again, and wonder what all this is on the top here. It looks to be a statue, and then you've got some sort of device here. Even you could say perhaps we've got ancient chemtrails in the sky here as well. Maybe that's nothing new. It is always a case of nothing new under the sun. Basically, this Antiquitech is the previous civilization's equivalent of Wi-Fi, you could say, really, and as well as heating and energy transfer by the looks of things. But I'll leave that there, and thank you for listening.